Rain like razors tore through the Arizona night. At 3:17 a.m., Elena Voss dropped to her knees in the mud beside Interstate 10, both hands clamped desperately over the torn thigh of a dying biker. Jack's Thunder Kane, Black Phoenix MC enforcer, 6'4" of muscle and leather, was bleeding out fast. His life poured onto the flooded ground with every fading heartbeat. "Don't touch me," he growled through gritted teeth. "Shut the hell up or you die right here," Elena roared, wrenching the combat tourniquet brutally tight. Headlights sliced the storm. A black SUV screamed to a stop. Two shadows stepped out slow, one swinging a heavy iron bar, the other already raising a silenced pistol. They weren't there to save him. They had come to bury him. And the only thing standing between this dying outlaw and a bullet to the skull was one exhausted 28-year-old trauma nurse who refused to run. Rain like razors tore across the Arizona desert, hammering the cracked windshield of Elena Voss's battered Ford Focus with merciless fury. It was 3:17 a.m. on Interstate 10, and the 28-year-old trauma nurse had just dragged herself through another 14-hour hell shift at Valley Trauma Center. Her scrubs clung to her skin like a second blood-stained shroud. Exhaustion clawed at her bones. All she wanted was the cold silence of her tiny Phoenix apartment and the sweet, empty darkness of sleep. Then the world exploded. 60 yards ahead, a blinding orange fireball ripped open the curtain of rain. Metal screamed like a dying demon as the massive chopper motorcycle cartwheeled through the air and slammed into the flooded ravine. The impact shook the highway like thunder. Elena's heart detonated against her ribs. She slammed the brakes. Tires hydroplaned wildly across black water, the car fishtailing toward the ditch. But fear had no time to breathe. She snatched the heavy military trauma kit from the passenger seat, kicked the door open, and plunged straight into the storm. The stench hit her first. Burning rubber, scorched gasoline, and the thick metallic tang of fresh blood. Lightning strobed across the scene. In the muddy ditch beside the interstate, the twisted wreckage of a blacked-out Harley lay on its back like a fallen giant. 10 feet away, a mountain of a man sprawled motionless in a spreading dark pool. Jack's Thunder Kane. Black Phoenix MC. Death skull patch gleaming wet on his soaked leather cut. 6'4" of raw muscle and outlaw fury, now reduced to a broken shell fighting for every last heartbeat. Elena dropped to her knees in the freezing sludge without hesitation. Her hands plunged straight into the torrent pouring from his ruined thigh. The femoral artery had been torn wide open by the crash. Blood pulsed out in hot, rhythmic jets, soaking her scrubs, her arms, the ground itself. Jax's eyes fluttered open, wild with pain and rage. "Don't touch me," he growled, voice cracking like gravel under tires. "Shut the hell up and lie still," Elena roared back, her voice forged in 1,000 midnight traumas. "Or you die right here in this goddamn puddle." Her fingers found the combat tourniquet in her kit. She cranked it viciously tight around his upper thigh, muscles burning, knuckles bleaching white. Jax arched in agony, a guttural roar tearing from his throat as his nails gouged deep trenches into the mud. The arterial spray finally slowed to a weak trickle, but his face was already turning the color of ash. He had maybe 90 seconds left. Headlights sliced through the downpour like the eyes of death. A sleek black SUV roared up and skidded to a stop on the shoulder above them. Two shadows stepped out slowly, deliberately. One gripped a heavy iron bar that glinted wet under the lightning. The other already had a silenced pistol raised, barrel steady despite the rain. They weren't here to help. They had come to finish the job. Elena's pulse hammered in her ears. She could still run. She could scramble up the embankment, vanish into the dark vineyard behind the highway, and live. But Jax's eyes, Those fading, defiant eyes locked on hers for one fractured second, and something inside her snapped. She was no one, just an invisible night shift nurse with a dead-end life and scars no one ever saw. But in that freezing, blood-soaked moment on the Arizona interstate, Elena Voss made a choice that would curse her forever. She stepped between the dying biker and the two killers, rain lashing her face like whips, and raised the road flare she'd yanked from her kit. The magnesium tip ignited with a savage hiss. Crimson fire exploded outward, painting the rain in blood-red light and casting long, demonic shadows across the killers' faces. "I'm a trauma nurse," she screamed into the storm, voice raw and unbroken. "I just clamped his femoral artery. You put a bullet in him now and his blood sprays all over your shoes. Every forensic tech in Phoenix will hunt you straight to hell." The gunman laughed, a cold, wet sound, and squeezed off a warning shot. The bullet slammed into the mud an inch from her knee, spraying filthy water across her legs. Elena didn't flinch. She stood rooted like a storm-broken tree, flare burning like a dying star in her fist, shielding the man who wore the colors of the most feared motorcycle club in Arizona. From somewhere far down the highway, the wail of an Arizona DPS cruiser began to rise above the rain. The two shadows cursed violently. They backed toward the SUV, eyes promising murder. The gunman turned one last time, silhouette framed by lightning. "You just signed your own death warrant, little bitch," he snarled. Then they were gone, swallowed by the storm. Elena dropped the dying flare into the mud. It hissed out in a cloud of steam. She looked down at Jack's Kane, still breathing, barely, and felt the full weight of what she had just done crash over her like the rain itself. She had stepped between a dying outlaw and the Reaper's own men. And the Reaper never forgets. Sirens tore through the night like dying screams as the ambulance rocketed into the glowing mouth of Valley Trauma Center. Elena Voss ran beside the gurney, boots slapping wet tile, her hands still slick with Jack's Kane's blood. The cold fluorescent light stabbed her eyes after the storm's darkness. Every breath burned. "Jack's Kane!" she shouted, voice raw and commanding. "Open femur fracture. Femoral artery severed. Combat tourniquet applied on scene. He's lost damn near 3 liters. Get him to OR now." The trauma team exploded into motion. The gurney vanished behind swinging doors with a final metallic clang. Elena stood alone in the suddenly quiet hallway, adrenaline draining from her veins like poison. Her knees buckled. She staggered into the staff break room, slammed the door and sank against the wall. The sink ran red as she scrubbed furiously at the blood caked under her nails. The water was ice cold. It matched the chill crawling up her spine. Those final words from the highway killer kept repeating in her skull like a death sentence. "You just signed your own death warrant, little bitch." She stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Pale face, hollow eyes, scrubs soaked dark with a stranger's life. She was 28 years old and already felt 100. Invisible. Alone. Just another night shift ghost who patched up the broken and went home to nothing. 35 minutes later, the hospital shook. The deep thunder of Harley engines rolled across the parking lot like an approaching army. 15 blacked-out motorcycles roared in formation, chrome flashing under security lights. 15 members of the Black Phoenix MC stormed through the sliding glass doors of the ER like a tidal wave of leather and steel. The waiting room froze solid. A mother clutched her child tighter. An elderly man in a wheelchair shrank back. Nurses stood rooted, trays clattering to the floor. The air itself thickened with the smell of rain-soaked leather, motor oil, and raw menace. At the front marched Victor Viper Harlan, president of the Arizona Charter. 6'5" of scarred war muscle, silver beard braided tight, face carved by a lifetime of battles. His heavy silver death skull ring slammed down on the reception counter hard enough to crack the laminate. "Where the hell is my brother Jax Kane?" His voice was gravel and thunder. Who the fuck dared lay hands on him? Every head in the room turned. Elena stepped out from the hallway shadows, shoulders squared, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Her scrubs were still stained with Jax's blood. She looked tiny against the wall of outlaws, but her voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. "I did." 15 pairs of eyes locked on her like loaded guns. The room went graveyard silent. Viper turned slowly, towering over her, blocking the overhead lights until she stood in his shadow. His scarred face twisted. "You? You dared touch one of ours?" Elena didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, eyes burning with exhausted fire. "I saved his goddamn life out there in the mud. That artery was ripped open. If I hadn't clamped it with my bare hands, he would have bled out in that ditch before the sun came up. He's in surgery right now, fighting for every breath. So don't you bring your mud, your boots, or your guns into my sterile ER." No one spoke to Viper Harlan like that. Ever. The silence stretched, razor-sharp. Then something shifted in the warlord's eyes. He studied her, really studied her. The blood on her scrubs, the tremor in her hands she couldn't quite hide. The way she stood between him and the doors like a lone soldier guarding the gates of hell. The rage drained from his face and became something deeper. Respect. Almost reverence. "What's your name, nurse?" "Elena." Viper nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Elena Voss. This club owes you a life debt. No one, and I mean no one, touches a hair on her head. Sit down, boys. Fill every damn chair in this waiting room. The nurse is our saint tonight." The bikers obeyed instantly, leather creaking as they claimed the plastic chairs like they owned the hospital. Elena exhaled for the first time in hours. A fragile thread of warmth flickered in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Then the main doors hissed open again. A man in an expensive dark suit stepped inside, flashing a gold detective's badge. "Detective Marcus Slade, Phoenix Homicide Division. I need the room for Jax Kane, immediately." Elena's stomach turned to ice. Her eyes dropped to his right hand. The silver signet ring glinted under the harsh lights, exactly the same chipped edge she had seen when the gunman raised his silenced pistol in the rain. He wasn't some rival gangster coming to settle a score. He was a cop, and he had come back to finish what he started on that blood-soaked highway. Elena Voss didn't wait for permission. The second Detective Slade's polished shoes disappeared around the corner. She grabbed Viper Harlan by the thick leather of his cut and yanked the 6'5" warlord into the dim vending machine hallway like he weighed nothing. 2 black Phoenix enforcers instantly flanked them, backs to the wall, eyes scanning every shadow. The hum of the soda machine sounded deafening in the sudden hush. "Detective Marcus Slade," she hissed, voice low and razor-sharp. "He's the one who caused the crash. He's the one who tried to finish Jax on the highway." Viper's scarred face didn't move, but the air around him turned lethal. Elena poured out every frozen detail. The warning shot exploding mud across her knees, the magnesium flare painting the rain blood red, the exact silver signet ring with its chipped corner glinting under the ambulance lights. Her words came fast, breathless, each one a blade. Viper's eyes went ice-cold. Pure murder rolled off him in waves. "You sure about this, nurse?" "I'm a trauma nurse," she shot back, chin high even though her legs were shaking. "I remember every scar, every face, every heartbeat I fight to keep alive. That ring, that voice. It was him." For one heartbeat, the hallway felt like the edge of a cliff. Then Viper's massive hand clamped down on her shoulder. Firm, protective, almost gentle. "Nobody touches you while we're still breathing. Not him. Not anyone." He turned to his men, voice dropping into a low growl that vibrated through the tiles. "Call the clubhouse. Medical van at the loading dock in 15 minutes flat. Bring the street dock." Elena's stomach twisted into a knot of ice. He just came out of surgery. He's on a ventilator, femur stabilized with titanium rods. Moving him now will kill him. Viper's eyes bored into hers, black and merciless. "Leave him here and Slade finishes the job with a syringe while we watch. You got a way to kill those monitors without tripping every alarm in the building?" Elena bit her lip until she tasted blood. This was federal crime territory, career suicide, life sentence. But the memory of Slade's dead eyes on that rain-lashed highway flashed behind her eyelids like lightning. She gave a single sharp nod. "Fine. But the ICU is locked down tighter than a vault. We need chaos, real chaos, to pull this off." One of the enforcers cracked his knuckles and grinned like a wolf. "We'll turn the entire East Wing into hell on earth." Viper looked down at Elena, something almost like pride flickering across his battle-hardened face. "You lead me and Tank straight into the ICU. We extract Jax through the basement tunnels." Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack. She was no longer the invisible night-shift ghost patching up strangers for minimum wage. In that fluorescent-lit hallway, surrounded by outlaws who lived and died by their own code, Elena Voss became something else entirely. She had just made a blood pact with the devil himself, and the only soul she was protecting was a dying monster who now owed her everything. The trauma surgeon had barely stepped out of the OR, mask still dangling from his neck, when Detective Marcus Slade's polished shoes planted themselves like a tombstone in front of them. "Jax Kane's room. Right now." Slade's voice was velvet over steel, badge flashing cold under the lights. At that exact second, the East Wing detonated. A heavy wooden coffee table exploded through the pharmacy glass like a cannonball. Shards rained down in a glittering storm. 5 Black Phoenix bikers slammed into each other on purpose, fists flying, boots kicking, guttural roars shaking the walls. Fake blood sprayed in crimson arcs across white floors and screaming patients. Alarms screamed like dying sirens. Security guards and uniformed cops poured toward the chaos, radios crackling, boots thundering past Slade in a panicked flood. Elena's heart hammered so hard it felt like it would shatter her ribs. She swiped her keycard with shaking fingers. The ICU doors hissed open. Viper and Tank moved like silent death behind her. 2 mountains of leather and muscle gliding through the sterile halls like ghosts of war. Room 412. Jax Kane lay unconscious on the bed, tubes and wires snaking across his massive chest. Monitors beeped in frantic rhythm. His face was still the color of death, but he was breathing, barely. Elena's hands flew with machine precision, even though terror clawed up her throat. She killed the oxygen line, swapped in a portable tank, ripped the leads, swapped the battery pack. Every second stretched like slow-motion lightning. Viper and Tank grabbed the bed rails. The heavy gurney rolled silently toward the service elevator at the end of the hall. The doors were closing when Slade burst out of the stairwell 30 feet away, silenced pistol already up. His eyes locked on Elena. Recognition hit like a bullet. "Stop right there." The elevator doors slammed shut with a metallic finality. Elena's voice cracked. "He saw us." Viper chambered around with a cold metallic click. "Let him come." The elevator dropped, basement level. Ding! They burst into the dimly lit loading dock. A white medical van waited, engine idling like a predator. Rain still hammered the concrete outside. They shoved the gurney toward the open rear doors. The stairwell door behind them exploded open. Slade stepped out, gun raised, barrel aimed straight at the center of Elena's back. "Step away from the bed, nurse." His voice dripped venom. "You've ruined my plan all night long." Tank instantly moved, shielding Jax with his own massive body. Viper melted out of the shadows like a demon, his own pistol leveled at Slade's chest. "You're no cop," Viper growled, voice low and lethal. "You're a filthy Mexican mafia rat. You rammed Thunder on that highway to shut him up about the port shipment." Slade's lips curled into a savage smile. His finger tightened on the trigger. Elena's hand shot up, hospital radio raised high, red transmit light blinking like a heartbeat. "Every word you just said is being recorded on the secure security channel," she screamed. Slade froze for one fatal heartbeat. Viper moved like lightning. The butt of his gun cracked across Slade's wrist with a sickening snap of bone. The pistol clattered away. Tank drove a shoulder into the corrupt detective, slamming him backward into a concrete pillar. Slade crumpled, gasping. Viper kicked the gun spinning into a storm drain. "Internal Affairs is going to tear you apart," Viper snarled down at the broken man. The rain outside roared like applause. They loaded Jax into the van. The doors slammed. The engine roared to life. Elena stood alone on the wet dock, soaked, shaking, watching the taillights disappear into the storm. She had just helped a dying outlaw escape federal custody. She had just burned every bridge she ever had. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like the laughter of devils who had finally found their queen. The rain had never stopped. It hammered the concrete loading dock like bullets as Elena and the bikers shoved Jax Kane's gurney into the back of the white medical van. The street dock was already inside, gloves on, IV bags swinging, ready to fight death one more time. Viper Harlan stood under the downpour, water streaming off his scarred face, silver beard plastered to his chest. He looked at Elena, shivering, soaked, arms wrapped around herself like she might fall apart, and his voice rumbled low, almost gentle. "You saved him twice tonight, nurse. First in the mud, then in my own goddamn hospital. The Black Phoenix MC owes you a life." Elena's throat closed. Tears burned hotter than the rain. Her voice cracked like thin ice. "Just take him. Get him out of here. And never come back to my hospital again." Viper smiled, a rare, hoarse thing that didn't reach the war in his eyes. He reached into his cut and pressed a heavy metal coin into her palm. The winged death skull glinted under the dock lights, edges worn from years of silent promises. "You ever need us, any brother, anywhere, show this. We'll appear. No questions, no hesitation. You're family now." The van doors slammed, engines roared. Taillights bled red into the storm and vanished. Elena stood alone, coin burning against her skin. the weight of everything she had just destroyed crashing down on her like the Arizona sky itself. She had thrown away her career, her safety, her entire invisible little life, for a dying outlaw she didn't even know. 8 months crawled by like scars healing in the dark. Slade was quietly arrested for corruption. The case disappeared behind closed doors and sealed files. Elena kept working the night shift at Valley Trauma Center. Same blood-stained scrubs, same hollow eyes, same lonely drive home under endless desert stars. Some nights she wondered if it had all been a fever dream. Until one freezing November evening. The employee parking lot was a black void, streetlights flickering like dying candles. Elena locked her car, breath fogging in the cold. Footsteps scraped behind her, drunken, angry. A man stepped into the light, red-faced, eyes wild, the relative of a patient who had died on her table 2 weeks earlier. "You!" he screamed, voice thick with whiskey and grief. "You let her die. You killed her." A knife flashed. Elena backed up, heart exploding against her ribs. The blade caught the weak light. Her back hit cold metal. No one around, no one coming. Just the wind howling between the cars, and the certainty that this was how it ended, alone, in the dark, for doing her job. Then the night itself came alive. A deep, guttural thunder rolled out of the shadows. Harley engines, low and lethal. One single headlight sliced through the blackness like the eye of God. A blacked-out motorcycle rolled slowly into the lot, chrome and leather gleaming. The rider sat tall, death's gold patch blazing white on his chest. He didn't speed. He didn't speak. He simply idled forward, engine growling like a caged beast. The drunk froze. The knife trembled, his face drained of color. He turned and ran, stumbling into the darkness, curses fading behind him. The rider kept rolling, slow, deliberate, until he passed Elena at arm's length. He never stopped. He never looked directly at her, just lifted 2 fingers to the side of his helmet in a single, silent tap. A warrior's salute. A promise carved in steel. Then he was gone, swallowed by the night, the thunder of his engine echoing long after the taillight disappeared. Elena's knees gave out. She slid down the side of her car, tears cutting hot trails down her frozen cheeks. Her fingers closed around the winged coin still tucked deep in her pocket. It was warm. It was real. She was still just a nurse, still broke, still haunted by 14-hour shifts and empty apartments. But she was no longer invisible. From that night on, the streets of Phoenix knew her name in whispers. Every dark alley, every rain-slicked highway, every shadow that moved behind her carried the silent, deadly protection of the Black Phoenix MC. The Ghost Army had claimed her. And Elena Voss, once the loneliest soul in the desert, finally understood what it meant to never walk alone again. You know, after pouring my heart into this story, it really messed me up in the best way. Elena was just this tired, invisible nurse with nothing left. No family, no backup, just scrubs and exhaustion. But the second she chose to stay in that freezing mud and fight for a stranger's life, everything changed. One raw, terrifying act of courage turned her from a ghost into someone the most dangerous men in Arizona would kill to protect. That's the part that gets me every time. In this cold, brutal world, you don't have to be a hero or a badass. You just gotta refuse to run when it matters. And sometimes, the darkest shadows become the only family that never leaves you. Damn. Makes you think twice before looking away, doesn't it?